Welcome to the program. President Akufo-Addo has reassured the international community of Ghana's unwavering commitment to upholding human rights despite the recent passage of the Anti-LGBTQ Bill. Addressing concerns during a diplomatic engagement, the president emphasized Ghana's consistent adherence to the rule of law and respect for human rights throughout its history. The president clarified that the bill is currently facing a legal challenge at the Supreme Court, and therefore, until a decision is reached through due process, no action will be taken by his government regarding the private member's bill. The International Monetary Fund has declined to comment on the anti-LGBTQ bill passed by Parliament because it has not yet been signed into law by President Akufo-Addo. According to the fund, it is yet to undertake an economic and financial assessment of the law on the country. The Bretton Woods institution made this known earlier.
Your Excellencies, I'm aware that last week's bipartisan passage by Parliament of the Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill on a private member's motion has raised considerable anxieties in certain quarters of the diplomatic community and among some friends of Ghana that she may be turning her back on her hitherto enviable, long-standing record on human rights observance and attachment to the rule of law. I want to assure you that no such backsliding will be contemplated or occasioned. I think it will serve little purpose to go at this stage into the details of the origin of this proposed law, which is yet to reach my desk. But suffice it to say that I have learned that today a challenge has been mounted in the Supreme Court by a concerned citizen to the constitutionality of the proposed legislation. In the circumstances, it would be as well for all of us to hold our hands and await the decision of the court before any action is taken. The operation of the institutions of the Ghanaian state will determine the future trajectory of the rule of law and human rights compliance in our country.
Business editor George Riafi joins me in the studio with more on this and the underlying implications on the country's finances. George, good to have you in the studio. We already know that we're likely to lose more than $3 billion. What more do we have to know?
So that has to do with projects that are supposed to be funded by the World Bank. So for us at Joy Business, we wanted to get some clarity the implications of this when it comes to Ghana's program.
Right.
We sent an email to the fund asking for clarity on our program and funding. But what they sought to explain to us in the mail is that as long as this anti-gay bill hasn't been passed into law,
right,
they don't have any comment on it right now. They also would like to comment after an economic and financial assessment has been done on Ghana's economy. So as in the particular bill and what will be their reaction, they don't have any comment on it. But they also sought to remind us as an institution what they stand for in terms of their values and against any discrimination and all the rest. And that's what they sought to explain to us in the email. So engaging them and from what they said in the email, it is not clear for now that if we go ahead to sign this bill, there will be any serious repercussions for the economy and all that, because they didn't give any indication of that sort in the email that we sought to get some clarity on what will be the impact on Ghana's program and donor support to Ghana.
What you're trying to say is that they have not made clear yet because they feel that it has not been assented by the president until it's done.
Unless it's done that way, then they could tell us that, okay, because of this, then we could also say that is the implication. But even if you go through the fund program, there isn't anywhere in the program that says this. But don't forget that our program is not just about the IMF. There are other partners on board. One of the reasons why we are getting this $300 million from the World Bank for the first quarter, it's part of the financing assurance coming from all these partners for Ghana's program. So even if you see the statement that the Ministry of Finance sent to the presidency, they also sought to explain that they don't have any clear directive from the fund that when you do this, but rather their concern is about the other donor partners and what could be their response. So from what we got from the fund in terms of the email, there isn't any clear statement that sort to suggest that if we do this, this will be the implication. They are saying that if you want us to get the direct implications of what will be our response, let it be passed into law or signed into law, Then we'll come and give you our response on whether you will get Fund A or Fund B or that.
George, do we have a precedent of this? Do we know countries that, have passed these stringent laws and are still under an IMF program?
A quick scan, you could see that, as in the word stringent, I cannot independently verify now, but I think you can talk about Zambia that has a similar law. There are other countries that has similar laws. I remember there was an incident in Kenya where the Supreme Court had to rule and say that you have to respect human rights and all the rest. So it appears that we've not seen any country that the fund has said that because you had put in place this law, we will draw our funding. I think the concern has rather been from the World Bank when it comes to, there was a Uganda situation where they threatened that if they go that way, funding could be affected. I remember the past World Bank country director, the statement that was issued to the effect that Ghana should tread cautiously in going this way because of the impact on funding for Ghana. So I don't think that per the fund program or the IMF program, there's any example elsewhere that because country A went that way, they have withdrawn funding. I think rather, if there's any situation right now and the impact of continuous support from our partners has to do with the World Bank program. And just to get a bigger picture, for an IMF program, there are several partners that are on board. You have the World Bank, you have donor partners that also contribute to the program. So the funding component from the IMF itself is just a fraction from the whole total funding that we are going to get being under the fund program. Don't forget that the fund is giving us somewhere a little over $3 billion. World Bank is coming on with some almost about $2 billion or so. You have Germany and the other European Union partners also coming on board. So it's a total funding thing. And that is why the Ministry of Finance, the statement said that, well, they are worried about how the other donors react in terms of the success of the IMF program, and not the IMF itself and its institutions saying that because of this, we wouldn't extend support to you, country Ghana.
Let's look at some of the donors. Do we know how they have reacted in an incident like this before?
I think that it has to do with the World Bank and outside the Uganda situation about their reaction. In terms of the country specific, I still don't have any clear indication that Germany said that because of this, they have pushed the human rights angle. And you realize that it's sometimes more of a threat than actually being done. And sometimes discussions could delay on the program and the facility, and you know that it is because of this. But as I speak right now, we also can independently verify that there were individual countries that said that because you have gone that way, we are withdrawing funding. There's more of a threat, and sometimes these countries have gone back to soften their stance in terms of the sentence that have been given to these people and all the rest. So there isn't any, I think that if you go through the Ministry of Finance advice to the president, there's more of a caution and a worry that looking at the current state of our economy, if they should go that way, these are the implications for the economy.
All right, George Riafe is Joy Business Editor here at the Multimedia Group. Thank you very much. So let's take a look at the response from in the International Monetary Fund briefly, and it says, diversity and inclusion are values that the IMF embraces. Our internal policies prohibit discrimination based on personal characteristics, including but not limited to gender, gender expression, or sexual orientation. Like institutions, diverse and inclusive economies flourish. We are watching recent developments in Ghana closely. We cannot comment on a bill that has not yet been signed into law and whose economic and financial implications we have yet to assess. So this was what George Riafe was talking about. Of course, we bring you more on this conversation, but